James Version of the Bible, the text reads, "So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David until the carrying away into Babylon are 14 generations, and from the carrying away into Babylon unto Christ are 14 generations." Matthew 1:17. How many years is 42 generations? This means that 2042 years passed between Abraham and Jesus. If you divide 2042 years by 42 generations, you get an average of approximately 50 years per generation. So that's a movie called 2042. Back in 2011, it's about the Mayans predicted the unavoidable, the divine cycle of death and reborn. If it is true that there was 2042 years, this movie is actually referenced to a reborn of Jesus Christ, the time period between Abraham and Christ. Actually, there's a movie released on February 5th, 1993. Which is 52 or 25. Which is the fallen angels imprisoned, the second heaven and fifth heaven. The movie is called Rain Without Thunder. It's the year 2042 and the threat is real. Women are going to prison for terminating their pregnancies. Another movie reference to 2042 is Terminator Dark Fate. Since we don't know the exact number of years and the exact number of generations between Abraham and Jesus, but you can tell by the movies. Terminator is always been the movie series that is reference to our future, the end times. So I think that means it is possible that 2042 years is the exact number of years between Abraham and Jesus. How many generations were there between Adam and Jesus? 63 generations. Adam died before the flood. Shem fathered 12 generations until Abraham, and they were again alive at the same. According to Matthew 1:17, there were 42 generations between Abraham and Christ. All in all, there were 63 generations between Adam and Christ. How many generations have there been since Adam and Eve? 127 generations. The answer would be around 127 generations since Adam. So I don't know how they come up with the generations' names and the period of time, but these are the last generations of the end times right now. Regarding to the Promised Land, the first time our humanity entered the Promised Land, which is the Israelites, is tied to Joshua. This event associated with Joshua's life. So Joshua was 68 to 78 years old when he entered the Promised Land. I think this is what is indicating the end times. I think there is some kind of relationship. How many years of the generation, the last generation, will survive until the end of the end times? I think it's pretty much relevant to what Jesus said. The generation will not pass away until everything is fulfilled, and also the generation will not be over 70 years old, and if they live over 70 years old, it will be very difficult. So it's like some people that reach almost 80 years old. So right here you can see that Joshua, when he entered the Promised Land, which is the end of the end times, I think is indicating that is the total number of years between 68 to 78 years. So now let's take a look at the Forgotten Books of Eden, the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan. Life of Adam and Eve. It recounts the lives of Adam and Eve from after their expulsion from the Garden of Eden to their deaths. It provides more detail about the fall of man, including Eve's version of the story. Satan explains that he rebelled when God commanded him to bow down to Adam. After Adam dies, he and all his descendants are promised a resurrection. Books 1 and 2 begin immediately after the expulsion from the Garden of Eden and end with the Testament and the translation of Enoch. great emphasis is placed in Book 1 on Adam's sorrow and helplessness in the world outside the garden. In Book 1, the punished serpent attempts to kill Adam and Eve, but is prevented by God, who again punishes the serpent by rendering it mute and casting it to India. Satan also attempts to deceive and kill Adam and Eve several times. In one of his attempts on their life, he throws a boulder, which ends up encompassing Adam and Eve. God eventually saves them and compares this event with the upcoming resurrection of Christ. God also predicts several other future biblical events, including Noah and the flood. So obviously, God didn't predict. He planned to have the events Noah and the flood. Okay. And God punishes the serpent by rendering it mute and casting it to India. I think this has some kind of truth in this sentence because you can reference back to all the religions. It sounds like that the religions in the East are originated or relatively similar to Buddhism. So I'm not surprised that if God really did cast serpent to India, I'm not saying that India is the place of sin or whatever, but the pagan religions related to Shiva and all the stuff. So the Greek version of life of Adam and Eve. After being banished from the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve go to the east and live there for 18 years and 2 months. Eve gives birth to Cain and Abel. Eve dreams that Cain drinks the blood of Abel, but that it then came out of his mouth. Cain kills Abel. Michael promises Adam a new son, and Seth is born in place of Abel. Adam begets 30 other sons and 30 daughters. As Adam falls sick and is in pain, all his sons and daughters come to him, and he briefly recounts to them the story of the fall. Seth and Eve travel to the doors of the garden to beg for some oil of the tree of mercy, tree of life. On the way, Seth is attacked and bitten by a wild beast, which goes away when ordered by Seth. Michael refuses to give them the oil at that time, but promises to give it at the end of time, when all flesh will be raised up. The delights of paradise will be given to the holy people, and God will be in their midst. On their return, Adam says to Eve, "What hast thou done? Thou hast brought upon us great wrath, which is death." Eve recounts to her sons and daughters the story of the fall from her point of view. In the garden, she is separated from Adam. She stays with the female animals and Adam with the male ones. The devil pursues the male snake to rebel against Adam and his wife. At the hour the angels go up to worship the Lord, Satan disguises himself as an angel and speaks to Eve using the mouth of the serpent. The serpent seduces Eve, who swears to give the fruit to eat to Adam too. The serpent places in the fruit the poison of his wickedness, which is lust. When Eve eats it, she discovers that she is naked. All the trees of the garden lose their leaves. Only a fig tree, the plant she ate of, still has leaves, and she hides her shame with its leaves. Eve looks for Adam and deceives him. He also eats the forbidden fruit. Michael sounds a trumpet, and God enters the garden, mounted on the chariot of his cherubim and preceded by the angels. His throne is set where the tree of life is, and all the trees break out in blossoms. He calls Adam, who hid because he was naked, and reproaches Adam, Eve, and the serpent. The order of the reproaches is the opposite to that of Genesis. When the angels are casting Adam out of paradise, he asks to be allowed to implore God, saying, "For I alone have sinned." He begs God to be allowed to eat of the tree of life. God refuses to give him the fruit of immortality, but promises if Adam will keep from all evil to raise him up in the last day and give him the fruit. Before being cast out, Adam is allowed to take sweet spices, to offer sacrifices and seeds for his food. Adam lies sick and foretells that Eve will die shortly after. He asks Eve to pray, because they do not know whether God is angry with them or merciful. While Eve is praying unbendedly, the angel of humanity, probably Michael, comes and shows her the spirit of Adam gone from his body and ascending to God. Chapter 33 to 41 narrate, with great richness of liturgical detail, the funeral of Adam. A chariot of light, borne by 4 bright eagles with seraphim and angels, arrives where Adam's body lies. The 7 heavens are opened, and Seth explains to his mother, who are the 2 fearful figures in mourning, the sun and the moon, deprived of their light because God is present. God has mercy on Adam, who is cleansed 3 times in water before being carried before God. God stretches out his arm and hands Adam over to Michael to be carried to the 3rd heaven until the last day. The chariot and all the angels bear Adam's body to the garden and lay him on the earth. Only Seth can see the scene. The body is covered with linen clothes and fragrant oil is poured on it. The body of Abel also, which until then the earth had refused to receive, is taken to the same place. Both bodies are buried in the place from which God took the clay to create Adam. God calls Adam, whose body answers from the earth. God promises Adam that he and every one of his seed will rise again. 6 days later, Eve asks to be buried near Adam and dies praying to the Lord. 3 angels bury Eve near Adam, and Michael tells Seth never to mourn on the Sabbath. The Latin version of Life of Adam and Eve. The story begins immediately after Adam and Eve's banishment from the Garden of Eden and continues to their deaths. After being banished from the Garden of Eden, they go to the west, and after 6 days they become hungry. But the only food they find is that for animals. They decide to do penance in order to ask mercy to the Lord and to return in the garden. Adam explains to Eve how to do penance. He will stay 47 days immersed in the Jordan and Eve 40 days in the icy Tigris. Adam enters in the Jordan and prays the Lord together with all the creatures of the river. Satan disguises himself as a bright angel and talks her out of it. Eve returns to Adam, who reproaches her. Eve lies prostrate with grief. Adam complains about Satan persecuting them, and Satan explains that he and his followers refused God's command to worship both Adam, the image of the God, and God himself. Thus Satan, with his angels, were expelled from heaven, deprived of their glory, and began to envy men. Adam, unaffected by the story, serves 40 days of penance in the Jordan. Eve is so grief-stricken that she leaves Adam and goes alone toward the west, lamenting and crying. When it is the time for her to give birth, she is alone. Adam reaches her and prays the Lord. Because of his prayer, many angels arrive to help her in the delivery. Cain is born and immediately is able to run. They return east. Michael is sent by the Lord to teach Adam agriculture. Abel is born. Eve dreams that Cain drinks the blood of Abel. Adam and Eve make Cain a husbandman and Abel a shepherd in order to separate them from each other. But Cain murders Abel. There is no trace of the common story found elsewhere that Cain and Abel had twin sisters, and Cain's killing Abel is passed over quickly. Seth is born in place of Abel, along with 30 other sons and 30 or 32 daughters. The Forgotten Books of Eden. The first book of Adam and Eve. Cain and his twin sister Luluwa is born, and Abel and his twin sister Aglaia is born. The Forgotten Books of Eden. The second book of Adam and Eve. As for Adam, he knew not again his wife Eve all the days of his life, neither was any more offspring born of them, but only those 5, Cain, Luluwa, Abel, Aglaia, and Seth alone. The number of Adam's children, as says the old tradition, was 33 sons and 23 daughters. Adam recounts to Seth that after the fall, he was caught up into the paradise of righteousness and saw a chariot with the Lord seated on it among angels. Adam worshipped the Lord, who promised him that knowledge will not be taken away from Adam's seed forever. Adam continues to recount briefly to Seth the history of the world up to Last Judgment. The Second Temple period is marked as a time of iniquity, but the destruction of the temple is not recounted. Adam dies at the age of 930, and the sun, the moon, and the stars are darkened for 7 days. Adam's soul is consigned to Michael till the day of judgment, when his sorrow will be converted into joy. God and some angels bury his bodies and Abel's. Eve perceives that she will die and assembles all her sons and daughters for her testament, predicting a double judgment of water, probably the deluge, and fire. Seth is charged to write on 2 tablets the life of his parents. 6 days later, Eve dies, and Michael tells Seth never to mourn on the Sabbath. Chapter 52 to 57 include various additional traditions. The tablets written by Seth about the lives of his parents are put in the place where Adam used to pray, that is, Temple Mount. Only Solomon could read them. The entry of Adam into the garden only 40 days after his creation. 80 for Eve. Why was the Book of Enoch removed from the Bible? The Book of Enoch had been rejected by the Jews because it contained prophecies pertaining to Christ. The second book of Enoch, also known as the Book of the Secrets of Enoch, is most noted for its description of multiple heavens and accounts of battles between angels and devils. This account is thought to have been known by and to have influenced the Apostle Paul, who described his experience of being taken up to the third heaven. 2 Corinthians 12:2-4. Enoch describes the 10 heavens this way. The first heaven is just above the firmament, Genesis 1:6-7, where the angels control atmospheric phenomena such as the storehouses of snow and rain and the waters above. Second, in the second heaven, Enoch found darkness, a prison where rebel angels are tortured. 3. In the third heaven, he sees both paradise, represented as the Garden of Eden, also guarded by angels, as in 2 Corinthians 12:2, and hell, where bad men are tortured. 4. The fourth heaven is the place of the movements of the sun and the moon, which are described in detail. There is also on this level a heavenly choir comprising soldier angels whose singing is wonderful and marvelous. 5. In the fifth heaven, Enoch found some Gregory, soldiers of Satan, that looked like human beings but were giants. They were in a state of limbo, having not yet been condemned, and Enoch convinced them to repent. 6. In the sixth heaven, he sees the angels in charge of governing the cosmos and people. These are the archangels who are above angels, measure all life in heaven and on earth, and the angels who are appointed over seasons and years, the angels who are over rivers and sea, and who are over the fruits of the earth, and the angels who are over every grass, giving food to all, to every living thing, and the angels who write all the souls of men, and all their deeds, and their lives before the Lord's face. 7. In the seventh heaven, Enoch, now guided by Gabriel, is allowed to enter and sees the Lord on his throne face to face, but only from a distance. This is where the legions of God's angels live in beautiful light. 8. The eighth heaven is just below the upper firmament in which are stuck the constellations. Here lives Mesulov, changer of the seasons and mover of the constellations. 9. The ninth heaven is the upper firmament in which are fixed the constellations and the changer of the seasons. 10. The tenth and the final heaven is where God's throne resides, and God's face may be seen up close. Here he holds court.